think we all can agree that recently good comedy movies has been more of the dying breed. And it is a long time between when you actually see a good new comedy. And it is not like in the golden age of the 90s when you had stars such as Chris Farley that did a couple of funny ones like Tommy Ball, Almost Heroes. You had Adam Sandler with Happy Gilmore. Then you had Jim Carrey with the masked cable guy and Ace Ventura. In short, it was just a decade of very funny, hilarious comedy movies, and the one I will be talking about today just shows how much funnier comedy movies used to be back in the day. The movie from 1998 called Dirty Work with Chris Farley as an uncredited act is just that kind of movie I doubt that they would actually make today. If they did, it probably would have had a 3 or 4 out of 10 on IMDb and be really hard to find. Because more than most, it's that kind of movie you can watch on a boys' night out, crank up a few beers and really have a hell of a laugh. Because I believe it to be kind of creative. Sure, the concept with these guys starting a hilarious revenge for hire project where it is all about collecting money for a heart transplant may be a ridiculous attempt at making a plot. But the stunts and pranks with these hookers called the dead hooker prank, the dead face prank, when they spray down this building, all those scenes are really funny and really makes you laugh hard like you should in comedy movies. It is a movie that in short I feel could never have been made today, unless of course it was really hard to find. Because directors are of course saying that they can't make these ridiculous over-the-top comedy movies like this one, where they do a lot of crazy stuff and they also cast crazy characters. Just look at these guys in the movie, the crazy brothers where one has learned not to take crap from anyone. You got this oversexualized creepy old man. That is the father of the bunch. And he is really a funny character sitting in the living room looking at hot chicks. Funny thing is also, you think he could have been a real character. So it's a really good act by Jack Warden. Then you have got this Dr Farthing, the one with the gambling problem that keep on being beat up and losing body parts because he can't pay the bookies. Which of course also is a character you do not see in a lot of other movies. But of course it could have been a real thing altogether. But those scenes when he tells the brothers about the bookies and how he struggles to pay them is actually very good. You got Chris Farley of course with some scenes in the movie where he yells on and goes crazy, especially the crazy scenes right towards the end with the skunks. It just then goes to show when you go overboard, when you go crazy doing wild stuff like other movies do not dare to do, you get a funnier, you get a better comedies. Once again, that just shows one more time how this movie shows how much funnier comedy movies used to be back in the day. I think really this movie could have inspired later movies such as Jackass, actually because the pranks and jokes they do not do in other movies, they do that in the Jackass movies and this movie. To get back at people that basically have been treated like shit is actually something done in a high sense of creativity. Of course, it may not beat the palm tree thing in Beverly Hills Ninja, but the movie is really made in that image. Of course, it is such a shame that they can't really go overboard like this as they used to do in the 90s anymore. But the movie is really enjoyable and makes me just want to read the 90s for comedy movies as there is a lot of gold out there. One other reason why I like this one is because it is so raw and right in your face. Heated arguments between the brothers, the condemning of the building, how the lead character gets thrown out by his wife. It is just done so wild and exaggerated. Also when Chris Farley shouts at this jukebox, or when the one character gets thrown out of a window during the fight, and the lead character tells the opposite story to the girl he likes to impress her. It is just brilliantly done in a way that yes is kinda overdone, of course not too realistic at times, but I just cherish it so highly when comedies are done the way it is in this movie. Would I in other words go nuts, then of course I always wish they could go even more nuts. But this one deserves its place in a line of good comedy movies from the 90s. And once again, it is just not this kind of movie. You don't see it anymore. It is just one of those movies that shows how funny comedy movies used to be. I had many hard laughs during this movie. And of course, comedy is also a very personal thing. But I am certain a lot of people would agree that this movie is much better than the kind of comedy movies they are making today. where you can't offend anyone. You have to get an acid test into if that joke or prank in a movie offended someone or not. Of course, there are ways around this when you do hidden camera stuff like Eric Andre with Bad Trip or the Borat movies. But of course, that is not really the same thing as more a traditional comedy movie where you build a story around the characters and put them into a setting where there's comedy between them and not random people on the street. The thing is, like I said, when you have to test if the joke is okay, when you have to test if this or that thing offends anyone, you ruin the great moment of comedy because it is all about doing it on the spot, having fun and making people laugh without really thinking about if you went too far until after the joke or prank is delivered. That's what this movie does so well in all fundamental levels. Of course, naturally, on some levels, the comedy audience may have changed, and we all like different movies, but there's a lot of talk of good comedies being a dying breed, and this movie is just a refreshment in the age of anyone but you and the holders, which are some of the worst comedy movies I have ever seen. Of course, not one of them are direct comedy movies, but they are both movies that try to make you laugh and have funny scenes, which you do not find in one of those movies. You also have movies such as I Want You Back that did a few crazy scenes when they were together at a frat party with these 7-year-old girls. But of course, rather than making good comedy, the one father character of the little boy had to be gay just to provide inclusion. That's really where we're at now. But at least in this movie, you can go back and dream of good comedy movies that actually tried heart and soul to entertain you. That's at least what it did to me. Gave me a hard laugh and gave me a slight hope for better comedy movies in the future. For me, the rating for this one would be a strong 7.